Hi, in this video I will tell you my 5 favorite German podcasts for learning German. So I will start with A1 to A2 and then go from there to B1, B2, C1, C2. So level A1 and A2, my favorite 2 podcasts for this level are Coffee Break German and Slow German with Anik Rubens. Coffee Break German is very well known. They have Radio Lingua as their creator. They make a lot of different podcasts in Spanish, French, Italian, and I think maybe a couple others as well. They start with episode 1 for complete beginners, so if you have no prior knowledge of German whatsoever, this is a very good podcast to start with because they will start right where you are, and their episodes will get harder and harder as you progress through the episodes. Their podcast is basically like a free course. You don't have to pay anything to listen to their course. But I would say that it's probably the best free beginner's course out there. Slow German with Anik Rubens is more on the A2, B1 side. She talks about more general topics and won't really teach you anything, but it's a really good source of listening material because she speaks very slowly, very articulate, and topics are very general and easy to listen to. Now we go to B1, B2. This is where things get a little bit more interesting, and I think most people really want to go here if they want to have a conversation in German. You understand the larger variety of topics ranging from sport, politics, culture, art, music, technology, basically anything, but then you're also able to have an opinion about these things. For intermediate learners, B1, B2, I can recommend one single podcast that is amazing in what they do, and that is Easy German. They also have a YouTube channel, which is amazing. They have subtitles in German and English at the same time, but they also recently started a podcast, and they really helped me get from B1 to B2 and make the transition to C1 because their topics are not that easy actually. There's sections that are a little bit harder that include philosophy, and they sometimes talk about politics as well, but they also talk very slowly and the pronunciation is very clear so that you can follow what they're talking about. And if the podcast might be too hard or you want to have more learning along with the podcast, they allow you to sign up for a sort of subscription where you will get the transcripts of the full podcast so that you can read. And they have a vocabulary helper where you can see the vocabulary that they're using in real time and see the translations into English, which I think is really helpful if you're still learning the language. But this is obviously not the highest level you can reach. There's higher levels to be reached in German. So if you want to get even more advanced, there are possibilities for you to do that. One I can really recommend is Viertausendhertz. They make podcasts, so they have a range of different podcasts. So a couple podcasts from Viertausendhertz that I can really recommend. Thinking about the future, Planet B. The second one is Frequenz. They talk about technology and producing. Number 3 is Elementarfragen. In Elementarfragen, he interviews a certain person, and a lot of the times these people are very interesting. Police officers to people who worked in refugee camps, to people that were kidnapped in Syria. And the episodes are very compelling and very interesting. The fourth is Deine Welt. It's kind of the same as Elementarfragen, but then more into, I don't know, like the everyday person. He doesn't necessarily take extraordinary people, he just takes normal people and show you their life. Viertausendhertz has probably the largest amount of material I've ever seen. They have about 300 episodes. And with podcasts being longer than an hour, you have about 400 hours of listening material. So you will definitely never get through all of those hours, I think. Actually, at the last moment, I switched my number 1 because I found a new podcast that I like way more than the old one. And I'm talking about like difficulty. First, it was Der Debatten podcast but I decided that this podcast is not suited for a lot of people. Instead, I think the best podcast out there for C1 learners is Gesagt by Zeit Online. Their guests are really interesting, and I think their podcast is probably the best because they won't stop recording unless the guest says that everything is said. That's why the podcast is called Alles Gesagt. So at the beginning of the podcast, the guest has to choose a code word. And if the guest says the code word, then the recording is immediately stopped and the podcast is over. But because of this freedom, the podcast can last up to 6 to 8 hours, 12 hours. I don't know what the longest podcast is that they had, but it takes me days to even get through episodes. I think it allows for the conversation to meander in a lot of different ways and gives you a good look into someone's way of thinking, but then in German. So I hope you like this video. I hope you like my recommendations. If you have any other recommendations for a good German podcast, leave them down in the comments below for other people to see. And I will see you in the next video.